Butch and Sundance, Connery and Cage, Lindhagen and Cranberry Vodkas. This episode, great things come in twos. Welcome to Channel 8.5. Hello, and thank you for joining us at Channel 8.5, a show about movies and TV and pop culture. My name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, how are you doing?
I am doing great, Joe. After last week's mention of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, we thought it would be fun to explore our favorite on-screen duos in action comedies and comedy films. Now, there are so many amazing duos, but we tried to whittle it down to just a few this time around, so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but let's jump in.
Let's do it. And let's be clear, we're talking about duos, but we're not doing duos from the beginning of time. As much as I would love to talk about Cagney and Lacey or
Laurel and Hardy,
Abbott and Costello, Ren and Stimpy, all the classics. We're staying in modern times here. No one wants to hear us talk about Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday as much as I would love to.
Unless that's something you're interested in, then let us know in the comments. But starting with the action comedy genre, what is first on your list, Joe?
There were so many choices for action comedy, specifically because action comedy, it feels like, lives in duos. It lives in the comedic pairings, and we'll get to it a little bit later, but also our favorite comedy pairs. There were so many to choose from.
Yeah, and I guess a side note to our listeners, we had initially thought to explore favorite duos in all of film and television, but to your point, there are so many to choose from, and we'll likely miss a few, and there are so many more we want to talk about. But if you do like these types of themed episodes and would like us to expand into the other genres, please let us know.
I'm going to start off with the oldest one on the list, just to get it out of the way. It's not even that old, but the movie 48 Hours is one of the movies that defined action comedy. Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, they play two cops, and Eddie Murphy is the fast-talking new young cop, and Nick Nolte is the old grizzled one. If you watch it today, it does not hold up to the politically correct standards of which we live in.
What would hold up?
Not an Eddie Murphy bit from 1982.
Exactly.
I'll tell you that. But I had to bring it up because it is probably the defining action comedy. And when I say defining, the movie that sets up all of the tropes, the buddy cop trope, the old grizzled veteran and the young hotshot cop, really the movie that gave Tommy Lee Jones a career. Because what is Tommy Lee Jones if not an old grizzled cop? And the pacing is incredible, but also the action scenes are great. It's directed by Walter Hill, and Walter Hill did a lot of, Streets of Fire, which not the one I should have let off with, but also The Warriors. Yeah, nobody knows that one either. We're really leading off with relatable content from Joe today. But if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, name an action comedy, I think of 48 Hours first because it was one of the first ones to do it.
Was it?
It wasn't the first, but I would say it's one.
But
of
it was
the most,
like one of the most
first
memorable.
Modern. It's one of the first modern. It sets up the tropes. It really set off Eddie Murphy's career because Eddie Murphy is electric in that movie. I watched it a lot as a kid, which is not something you should show a small child. But my aunt
which explains a lot about you, Joe.
Boy, does it! My aunt had the VHS copy. And I can picture the box. I can picture the tape in my mind. And it was one of her favorite movies too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would just be on. And so I can see it clearly in my mind, just different scenes playing. I'm not sure I could put them in the correct order because I saw it so many times as a kid, just sort of jumbled up.
Yeah.
But the dynamic between Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy sets the foundation for what so many other really action comedies do now. The straight-laced guy and the wild card. The reluctant team up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Men in Black? Stodgy Tommy Lee Jones and, hotshot cop Will Smith.
Yeah, Seven, and even if it's not a comedy, but that trope lives on through both drama and comedy.
And it does have a modern sensibility. If you do watch it now, the political correctness, again, maybe not as much, but it has a modern sensibility and a modern pacing to it that you can watch something, again, from 40 years ago that does hold up in those standards today.
Yeah. And that's rare, especially, the pacing is just completely different just given 20 years. Although this was in the 80s, 85?
1982.
Yeah.
And really, the plot is nothing spectacular. It really isn't. It's just two cops, teaming up in order to track down a killer. And really, Eddie Murphy isn't even a cop. He's just a criminal who's got paroled that gets teamed with Nick Nolte. And they go, all right, find a killer. The point of the movie isn't the plot. The point is the dynamic between the two of them. And
Yeah.
really, that's where the action comedy lives, is that the plot kind of is inconsequential.
Mhm.
Really, what is the other guy's plot about? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
about,
the other guys.
I'm going to talk about that one too, and I'm going to bring that
Yeah,
up, and
I
that's
forgot
why.
about that one.
But it lives in the dynamic between Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell's the straight-laced accountant. He's not an accountant, but
I don't even remember the main plot of that movie.
Mark Wahlberg is a cop that
Yeah.
gets put on desk duty after he accidentally shoots Derek Jeter. And he's
Well, I know that,
New York's
like,
favorite son.
I know, like, everything surrounding it, including how they're now basically the main duo after, was it The Rock or who was it?
Oh, Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock.
Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock. Yeah, jump off of the building.
Yes. Brilliant.
You know, I didn't like that movie when I first watched it.
I know. I remember because we saw it
And then,
together.
yeah, when I saw it the second time, I was like, oh, this is actually really funny.
But the plot doesn't matter. The plot
No,
is
yeah.
Steve Coogan is a billionaire and he's transferring some money, and there's a scheme about the pension plans, and
Yeah.
whatever, it's fine. It's more about Mark Wahlberg being flabbergasted that Will Ferrell is married to Eva Mendes in that movie.
Hiding, honey, but this dinner was tricky. Oof.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Sheila Gamble, his wife,
Come on, seriously, who is that?
his old lady.
Sweetie, it's a workstation.
Got it.
You come in here dressed like a hobo. It's distracting.
I know you're working. I'm so sorry.
Come on, seriously. Come on, what? Who is that?
He's just so dumbfounded.
How his backstory, Will Ferrell's backstory in the movie, is that he was an
He's
accidental pimp.
Which is a great rap album name, by the way.
Accidental pimp?
Yeah. Well, speaking of the buddy cop genre,
Yes. What is your first pick?
it was Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. I mean, that was the duo that I was raised on. I loved Rush Hour. I mean, Chris Tucker's arrogance paired with Jackie Chan's just earnestness
Mhm.
make for the perfect fish out of water situation, because both of them are really fish out of water in this high stakes situation. You know, Jackie Chan's fish out of water in the United States, and Chris Tucker has no idea what he's doing.
Exactly. Chris Tucker in
Yeah.
being able to do things well
Exactly, just with the FBI or whatever.
at
But
life, really.
and so you see the juxtaposition of Chris Tucker acting like he knows what's going on and almost, trying to guide Jackie Chan through this and basically impose on him the same condescension that the FBI agents were imposing on Chris Tucker. It's almost like he's taking it out on him. And Jackie Chan he just wants to get his, I guess, honorary niece back.
He just wants to do the right thing.
Must take me to see Consul Hunt right away.
Man, just sit there and shut up. This ain't no democracy.
Yes, it is.
No, it ain't. This is the United States of James Carter now. I'm the president, I'm the emperor, I'm the king. I'm Michael Jackson, you Tito. Your ass belong to me.
Why would they not want my help?
Because they don't give a damn about you. They don't like you. I don't like you.
I don't care. I'm here for the girl.
The girl don't like you. Nobody likes you. You came all the way over here for nothing. You ain't gonna be on.
Beach boy.
Oh, hell no.
I like Rush Hour 2, I think, more than the first Rush Hour. Specifically
Really?
because I think I do, because I like seeing Chris Tucker in China and just seeing him as the true fish out of water, not just in China, but just, again, Chris Tucker is the fish out of life because he's just kind of, to use a term that I used last week, magooing around the whole time, just accidentally falling into, hey, I fell on top of the bad guy. Lee, was this the guy that you were chasing? And then Jackie Chan, who's actually good at things,
Yeah.
being just, again, dumbfounded at the fact that I do all this work and this guy just comes in, magoos it all up, and somehow it works out.
You wonder how he's made it this far in life without being shot.
He's a police officer. They give him a gun. Let's talk about another Jackie Chan, though. Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson
Shanghai
in
Noon.
Shanghai Noon and
Yeah.
/ Shanghai Nights.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of the same dynamic as well of Owen Wilson being a fraud. Everything that he says is complete nonsense.
Someone watched Rush Hour and was like, we should make Rush Hour in the Wild West.
Let's do that with a blonde guy.
Exactly. And horses.
Plot wise, too, it's very similar.
Oh, they're very similar, but I think yeah, that's right, because he's coming from China to help find the princess and all. Yeah, I forgot about that.
It's
That's right.
basically the same plot, but just in one of them, they go, "Yeah, and old-timey horses?
I
Cool."
honestly think the reason Rush Hour stands out to me and maybe why it's my favorite buddy cop duo is because it wasn't the typical white cop and black cop. They were both people of color, which brings a different dynamic that
Mhm.
you don't see often. And Jackie Chan himself is an anomaly in that he's a total badass, but doesn't really act like it.
'Cause he does amazing fight scenes that are also slapstick bits. The
Well,
combination of those 2 things is incredible, and really, Jackie Chan's the only person that can do that.
yeah, like the typical martial artist is the stoic, mysterious presence, but Jackie Chan is usually always the underdog in a situation, and you actually see him get hurt and grimace when he gets hit. Unlike most fight scenes where the main character is like Rambo and he's taking hits and brushes them off like it's nothing and is usually in control of the situation, Jackie Chan feels as though he's flying by the seat of his pants.
Yeah, he's not Keanu Reevings in John Wicking it, where just he's in control the whole time, taking on 50 dudes in this well choreographed fight scene. No, no, no. He's just bouncing back and forth. He uses chairs. He'll take up a pot and just bash it on someone's head, and then it doesn't work.
Although Rush Hour is a very kind of popcorn flick, it still is offering you like a sense of mastery when it comes to those fight scenes.
And it's incredibly watchable. And Chris Tucker is doing what Chris Tucker does really well, but not too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in The Fifth Element. Fifth Element, he becomes too much. In this, it's subdued enough to where you get the Chris Tucker-ness, but it's not overkill.
Like you said, just right. Like it was just outlandish enough to be funny and not annoying.
So is that what we're calling? Are we calling Rush Hour the ultimate modern action comedy duo?
For me, it is actually, now that I think about it. At least buddy cop. I can't think of another buddy cop duo that.
I do think it is the most pop culturally well known.
Yeah.
When you think of a buddy cop, a modern buddy cop team, I'm going to guess that the majority of the people that you were to poll would say, oh, yeah, like Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan in Rush Hour.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right. It is decided.
You heard it here first, folks.
There will be no objections unless you want to pick somebody else, in which case that's fine.
Yeah.
We can be swayed very easily. If you were to make a compelling argument about somebody else, that's fine.
All right. So what's next on your list, Joe?
Even more modern than Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, have become a really great comedy duo because they've done a few things now. They've done the 2 Jumanji movies, and they also did a movie called Central Intelligence, which I don't know if it made a ton of money. I don't know if it was critically acclaimed, but I really like it.
I've never seen it, and I wanted to see it. It's just one of those things that I was like, I'll wait for it to come out on one of the streaming services.
It is the perfect put it on TBS and just watch it movie.
Yeah.
Because The Rock plays a former fat kid in high school who, got bullied, and Kevin Hart was the jock, right? Oh, yeah, exactly. But The Rock then turns into The Rock, and he becomes a spy. And so he comes back to town. It's 20 years later, their 20-year high school reunion.
My man! You better back the fuck up!
Whoa.
Back up, man! If I give you these fists, I'll fist your ass.
Calvin, it's me, Bob.
What? Sorry, do I know you?
Do you know Robbie Weirdick from high school?
Are you kidding? What? Wait, you're Robbie Weirdick?
Yeah!
God, man, look at you. You've lost like 200 pounds. See, you gained it back in muscle. Oh, my God, you look great. Dude, you used to be fat, Robbie.
The Rock just sort of edges himself into his life and accidentally gets him caught up with this plot to sell nuclear codes to like a black arms group. And
so Kevin, it's basically Grosse Point Blank meets 21 Jump Street.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is his character is still stuck in that mindset of being in high school. Like he's very insecure the whole time. He wears, it's not Hello Kitty shirts, but it's some sort of like a logo like that. Like he'll just wear a pink shirt with like a Hello Kitty type of logo on it. He wears a fanny pack, but he looks like The Rock and he's huge and he's very, shiny bald man with a lot of muscles. Women are hitting on him in bars and he's just ignoring it. And he goes, I'm done with that life. And, Kevin Hart's like, what are you talking about? But the whole time he's saying to Kevin Hart, like, you were amazing. You were great. You were the only person who was standing up for me in high school. You were my only friend in high school. Kevin Hart's character is going, I didn't I stood up for you once. I told some guys to stop bullying you that one time. We weren't friends. And it's actually surprisingly an emotional story that I really, really liked. It's totally worth watching. It's very light. Like, it's not a heavy watch by any means.
Yeah, yeah.
I really like it.
Oh, I want to check that out. That actually sounds like a solid foundation for like a good relationship arc.
It is. And
Yeah.
the ending is very easy to see coming. But again, you don't come for the plot twists.
Yeah.
You come
yeah.
to see Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson play off of each other.
Mhm.
And for that, it's really great. Jason Bateman also has one scene where he plays such a snobby asshole. It's incredible, even for Jason Bateman levels, because he's really good at it. And I like
yeah,
Jason
he's
Bateman a
really
lot.
good at it.
But it's like it's jacked up to 11 snobbishness from Jason Bateman.
You know who plays snobbishness surprisingly well?
Who?
Adam Scott.
Oh yeah,
He's such a good douchebag.
incredible.
Like in Step Brothers, but even more so in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Robert, have you ever been down to the southern part of the Gulf on the Bonita Run?
Always wanted to. I hear it's amazing.
It is. It's gorgeous.
Are bonita fish big?
What?
Dale, don't interrupt the man when he's telling a story.
No, it's fine, Robert.
I was asking about the story.
What's this guy's deal?
I don't know, son. It's okay. Well, Dale, they are what's called a trophy fish. So, yeah, they're pretty big. I'm sorry.
He played Griff the bully in Boy Meets World. And he was kind
Did
of
he
a snobby
really?
bully. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
A very
Oh, crazy.
short arc. He wasn't in
Yeah.
a ton of episodes, but he was like the rival to Harley in Boy Meets World. And then the two henchmen, one of them played by Ethan Suplee and the other one whose name I cannot remember, kind of switch sides to Griff. And then Harley gets all, mopey about it. And then they switch sides back to Harley.
Oh
one of
my
the first
God.
roles that Adam Scott had was as Griff the bully in Boy Meets World.
It's funny because I just started rewatching Boy Meets World and I haven't gotten to when they're a little bit older. But yeah, I actually remember this.
The first season of Boy Meets World is really strange to think about because they're, I
It's
think,
still
in middle
really
school.
good.
It's
Yeah, they're in
so
middle school.
good. Even the pilot episode is very good.
I was apprehensive in putting it on because I was thinking to myself, okay, I wonder if this is not going to hold up in the way
It's
that
going to disappoint you.
Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers didn't hold up when I
You
bought the DVD.
Shut your mouth. Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers does hold up.
Chip and Dale's aside, but it actually holds up really well and is
Yeah, it
actually
does.
it's still really funny.
It's shocking how good Boy Meets World is. And it does hold up.
And how surprisingly explicit relative to Disney. I mean, it was on Disney Channel, but dealt with a lot of kind of
Adult issues.
yeah.
I mean, the guy who rides the motorcycle, he gets into a motorbike accident and is in a coma in the hospital. And Sean is crying over his body. And then we never see him again. It's just like the end of the season. I want to say season 4. And then
Yeah.
he's just gone forever. And you go,
Oh my
whoa,
God.
what happened? Now, in Girl Meets World, the sequel that follows Topanga and Corey's daughter, he does come back. So we find out that he did not actually die in that motorcycle crash. But man, Boy Meets World getting heavy.
Talk about a cliffhanger that's 20 years long.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true.
That's so weird that they brought him back. You watched Girl Meets World? I'm
Oh,
surprised.
I was very curious because I love Boy Meets World and I wanted to know, what are they going to do with this? And
Was it any good?
look, man, I'm not the age range that they were trying to get with Girl Meets World.
Which doesn't make sense. Like, why are you going to direct it at a younger age group if they're not going to know what Boy Meets World was?
They're not going to care who Corey and
Yeah.
Topanga are. They're not going to care. So they brought back, I watched a surprising amount of episodes of Girl Meets World. I'm not kidding.
More than you'd like to.
More than
admit.
I should probably be admitting. They brought back Angela, who was Sean's girlfriend for a long time. Obviously they brought back Sean, they brought back Eric for a few episodes. They weren't just one episode. Mr. Feeney shows up for 1 or 2 episodes,
Yeah.
but kids today aren't going to care about Sean and Angela.
Exactly. So they should have just made it directed toward us, like the millennials who grew up on.
Exactly.
Boy
But
Meets
we're
World.
typically not the audience that Disney Channel's trying to hit. So it'd be weird to have
But
something-
a lot of us are going back and watching Boy Meets World. So, Disney Plus has a Mandalorian. So, they could have made it an adult thing.
they could have. Maybe
You know
they
what I mean?
probably
Like
didn't think. Girl Meets World.
Did it do well?
I have no idea. I'm not exactly in touch with with the audience for Girl Meets World, so I don't know if that's what the people are talking about.
Possibly my favorite joke in Boy Meets World to this day is when Eric is trying to convince his parents to let him do something or another, and his dad goes, "We can't take you seriously with your fly open." He zips it up, but the tail of his shirt is still hanging through his fly, and his parents are still laughing at him, and he just
And he rips his shirt through the fly.
he rips his shirt through his fly. That bit has stayed with me since I was a kid. But next on my list, Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz in Django Unchained.
I had that on my list. You're counting this as an action comedy?
Meh, I guess loosely, because I think their dynamic was funny. But when you phrase it that way,
Oh, now we can open this up to a whole host of things. If we're counting Django Unchained, the movie at the end where Jamie Foxx burns down the slaveholder mansion is an action comedy. Let's do it.
You're telling me that Jonah Hill, dressed up as a Klansman, telling his fellow Klansmen to be thankful that his wife cut the holes in their sheets is not a comedic scene?
It is funny, but that doesn't make it an action comedy.
What would you call Django Unchained?
I would call it more of a adventure story, more of a fairy tale adventure with set in, 1800s slavery,
Yeah.
a slavery setting, the American South. That's what I want. An adventure fairy tale set in Confederate era American South.
I agree, but since we're going to wedge in some adventure films, my next one was Harrison Ford and Sean Connery in The Last Crusade.
I was going to ask this question too of, are we counting Last Crusade as an action comedy? Because I wanted to talk about Harrison Ford and Sean Connery.
Yeah, I think we can let it slide because their duo is so charming and funny, and it made their father-son relationship feel so real. The frustration of a son with his father who sees him now as this flawed human being and can never gain his approval. But I also love the moments when they're fixated on solving a puzzle and just the focus and excitement that they share and the way that they sort of play off of each other. It just made for an interesting dynamic and relationship arc.
And also the first line that Indiana Jones has when Henry goes, "Junior," and he goes, "Yes, sir." You immediately get the dynamic.
Yeah.
It was incredible that just from the first line,
Yeah.
you understood exactly how this was going to go, to the point where, he's criticizing Indiana.
Dr. Jones.
Yes?
I will take the book now.
What book?
You have the diary in your pocket.
You don't. Do you think my son would be that stupid that he would bring my diary all the way back here? You didn't, did you? You didn't bring it, did you?
Well,
You did.
look, can we discuss this later?
I should have mailed it to the Marx brothers. Will you take it easy?
Indiana's just looking sheepish in the corner, being like, "Dad, shut up. Ah, you're embarrassing me."
In front of the nice Nazi woman.
And then when they realize that Indiana Jones realizes that he has slept with someone who's also slept with his father, which is, I'm sure, a whole host of things going on in his brain at that point.
And I think it's so cool that George Lucas pitched Indiana Jones to Steven Spielberg as James Bond, but within the adventure genre, and then wrapping up the trilogy with Sean Connery playing Indy's father, given it derived from the very character he was so well known for playing.
We're going to talk about Sean Connery later, but it's kind of amazing that the pitch that Lucas made was, "Oh, you're not going to be able to, no one's going to give you James Bond. Here you go. Let's make this instead."
Yeah.
This is James Bond, but with mummies and tombs.
And a whip.
Yeah, and a fancy hat.
Yeah.
Is The Rock considered an action comedy then? Because it's not. It's not an action comedy, but I just want to talk about Sean Connery more.
It's not, but I would say Michael Bay's action films don't usually take themselves very seriously.
Sean Connery and Nick Cage aren't comedians. They're not comedians, but they can do quips. And Sean Connery, especially, specifically because he's got the stoicism of it, and he can say all of the lines very straight-faced, whereas Nick Cage can be the wild and crazy, sidekick.
I forgot Nick Cage was in a movie with John Travolta.
Yeah, Face Off.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it a duo, but they are an unlikely pair to star in a movie together.
What a ridiculous movie. Think about the premise of that movie. If you were to sit somebody down and say, "Okay, here's my big budget action movie. It's going to be about these two guys who cut their faces off to look like the other guy." That's ridiculous.
But it was very much in line with the 90s. Like, the 90s action movies consisted of studios that were just mixing a bunch of random crap with action movies to one up the ridiculousness of the last. So it didn't feel out of place at the time. I mean, did it to you? Like, did you think it was weird at the time it came out?
No, and it's actually not a bad movie, but it's so ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, the premise was ridiculous, but I mean, there was good conflict there. Like they send in a dude undercover into this prison only to get stuck there because all of his records of the mission were erased.
Think about what you're saying. You're talking about a movie where two people cut each other's faces off and wear them on the other guy. And you're saying it so seriously. And nobody questions this. Nobody is like, hey man, this is weird, right? This isn't something that should happen.
But that's what I'm saying, is that it's just a mashup. I mean, someone saw Silence of the Lambs and thought, oh, let's up the ante.
Yeah, exactly. But but that's horrific. That's what they should be saying. They should be like, hey, John Travolta, why do you want to cut off Nick Cage's face? Why do you want to do this? This is horrifying. I mean, at least in the Mission Impossible movies, they treat it like it's outlandish, because a lot of the technology in Mission Impossible is
It's 007.
kind of is impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with the masks being so completely perfect and then the changing of the voice.
Yeah, yeah. But I think we can dive into comedy duos now.
This is the hardest category because there are so many. Like we talked about at the beginning of the show, for the last, 80 years, since cinema, really,
Yeah.
and radio, to be honest.
Hmm.
The double act is the staple of comedy. I would say it's probably the most well-known form of comedy, if that's even something to say, because the act of one person bouncing off of another
Yeah.
and that rat-tat-tatness is...
Yeah, I would argue that comedy needs at least two people because
Yeah.
even when one person is playing the straight man, that is still imperative for the bit to work.
The one who is the butt of the joke and the one who is the making of the joke, and this setup and the punchline, hence, the double act.
Exactly. And speaking of that, my first duo is Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, because they've both been in a lot of movies together, but have each played both sides of kind of the straight man and butt of the joke.
I knew we were going to talk about this. I didn't put it on my list because I
knew
knew
I
you
was
were
gonna
going to do
bring
it.
it up.
I knew you were going to bring it up.
What I love about them is that you can clearly tell these two guys are good friends and have been for quite a while, which makes the movies where they're meant to be close believable because the chemistry's there. And in the movies where they're either just meeting or estranged, that much more interesting. Like at World's End, where Edgar
And-
Wright basically flips the script with having Nick Frost be sort of the guy that's wound tight.
Usually Simon Pegg is the one who plays the straight man. Nick Frost is playing the buffoon. Shaun of the Dead did it. Hot Fuzz did it. That's where World's End flipped it on its head. Where
Exactly. Yeah.
Nick Frost was now the straight-laced, bookish straight man. And Simon Pegg got to be the just disaster. He's such an abominable character in that movie.
And Nick Frost playing the straight man is comedic in itself, but it speaks to Edgar Wright's ability to find jokes even in his casting, and in a way uses the rule of threes to establish Nick Frost as the buffoon in the first two movies, and then the third film in his Cornetto trilogy, making him this ultra serious businessman.
I wonder if that's what contributed to people not liking World's End as much. It didn't for me. But I think the tone of that movie, and we talked about it on our Edgar Wright episode too.
Yeah.
It's such a depressing tone, and Simon Pegg's character is both depressing and very caustic, that it's difficult to watch. And
He's
then
not likable enough. Like,
no, he's
Nick
not
Frost, even when he's playing the frustrating idiot, he's still
lovable.
Yeah, lovable enough where you wanted him around.
In World's End, Simon Pegg is just so toxic that you
Exactly.
don't
That's
want
the
him
perfect
around.
point, yeah.
You actively do not want him around because you know that he's not good to have around.
You're not rooting for him.
No. And it's so strange that in the end he wins. The world
Yeah.
changes to his mindset. He
Mhm.
becomes the leader of the alien apocalypse world.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Blues Brothers.
Oh God. How did I not think of the Blues Brothers?
Even dating before 48 Hours. Blues Brothers came
Yeah.
out in 1980. Again, the classic tall, skinny man, short, fat man comedy combination.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
If the Blues Brothers came out today, do you think it would be successful? because that movie doesn't really have a plot.
Well, it does, but I doubt that you can actually make that movie today.
That's
They're
true.
basically they're just trying to get money for to save their church, right?
Yeah, they're trying. Well,
Yeah.
the orphanage, the
Or
church,
the
kind of
orphanage,
kind of
yeah.
both.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, all they're doing is just causing chaos and mayhem and tons of property damage to the city of
I
Chicago.
mean, just the ridiculous chase scene with the
Ugh.
cop cars, and they're just flying everywhere.
They need to get money from for their church, however possibly possible.
Honestly, Nick Frost and Simon Pegg would be perfect as the modern day Blues Brothers.
I mean, I think so.
Oh, that would be so interesting.
Is it also cheating if I say that the Blues Brothers is my favorite musical?
No, of course not.
'Cause it
Haven't you been to
is.
Universal Studios?
True. But I mean, it
Yeah.
is kind of cheating though. Let's be honest. It's a jukebox musical.
I mean, any more cheating than saying the "I have a spell on you" number in Hocus Pocus is a zombie sequence?
Shush.
You shush. You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
No, it's not cheating. So there. The Blues Brothers is a interesting example too of a Saturday Night Live movie that actually works. A lot of the Saturday Night Live movies aren't received well. And I should say it that way because I do like A Night at the Roxbury, and I don't care who knows it.
That's interesting because I always forget that it was an SNL skit before.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. It's taken
Yeah.
on a life of its own, and I know that specifically because when you live in Chicago and you listen to the radio, especially when the radio was popular, not now, you couldn't go a day without hearing "Sweet Home Chicago" on the radio. They played it on the radios, they played it in bars, they played it at sporting events. That song was everywhere, and it still is. So maybe that's why I am completely biased in my love for the Blues Brothers. They drive all around the city of Chicago, all the landmarks, Wacker Drive, the Daily Center, where
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd is like, "We are approaching Richard J. Daley Plaza." And I can do the accent. Because I'm from here. The one thing that I don't like about the Blues Brothers is that they drive, this is a very specific reference that nobody's really going to care about. They drive from Joliet Prison, which is like 40 miles outside the city, into downtown Chicago, and then to Calumet City, which is very, very far south, over the span of one conversation. That is impossible. You will not be able to do that. This is lies, I tell you. It really bothers me.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, going from Oxnard to downtown LA, and you'd run into traffic. No one would believe that.
Exactly. Thank you for making it a little bit more cohesive for our listeners who might get
Yeah.
that reference. To our one listener in Germany, I'm sorry, you're not going to know what this one is. But please keep listening. We love you.
All of our international listeners.
All the tens of you who listen. What's next on your list?
Lucy and Ethel from I Love Lucy.
Okay, a classic, a classic.
They have such a special place in my heart because it's one of the few American shows my mother used to watch back in Egypt. And when she first immigrated to the US, she would watch it all the time because it was familiar. So I grew up watching their shenanigans play out, but I love that they're just no more competent than one another. And Lucy comes up with these crazy hijinks schemes, and after very little persuasion, involves Ethel.
It's amazing that something from the 1950s can still hold up to this day, probably because a lot of it's physical comedy and a lot of it is wordplay. The most famous one is the conveyor belt scene, the chocolate, where they're stuffing the chocolate and they're trying to wrap it, and the conveyor belt's just getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and it still holds up. The Vitamita Vegemin scene, where Lucy's just drinking this clearly alcoholic cold medicine, and she's just getting more and more drunk and stuttering.
All your problems is in this little bottle. Vitamita Vegemin. Vitamita Vegemin contains vitamins, meat, vegetables, and minerals. Yes, with Vitamita Vegemin, you can spoon your way to health. All you have to do is take a big tablespoonful after every meal.
It's wonderful.
And my mom, I mean, when she's joking around or telling a story, you see a bit of Lucy in her. I mean, because she watched it so much that she just picked up some of her mannerisms.
Mhm.
But just culturally, they are an iconic duo.
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not husband and wife, but the dynamic between Liz Lemon and Jack Donaghy in 30 Rock, and the dynamic between Leslie Knope and Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec, very similar in that she is whether it's Tina Fey or Amy Poehler in the show, is the kooky, going doing the hijinks, and then Jack Donaghy or Ron Swanson is the straight person.
Or somewhat straight.
Somewhat, yeah. You'd never call Jack Donaghy the straight man.
She walks in and she's like, "Are you wearing a tuxedo?"
Why are you wearing a tux?
It's after 6. What am I, a farmer?
That is such a meta show.
Where they go in like the business hierarchy and they go, NBC Universal is owned by Comcast, which is owned by Scheinhart Wig Company.
And then GE buys them out halfway through, and like they're trying to sell washers or refrigerators.
Or just Jack's, how appalled he is that it could be bought out by a company from Philadelphia. I want to bring up two movies that are very similar in presentation, but have two, I think, incredible duos.
Are you going to? All right, go.
I want to talk about the movie Superbad.
Okay.
And I want to talk about Booksmart. What do you think I was going to say?
Swingers and Wedding Crashers.
That would have been a good one too. Two Vince Vaughn performances.
But continue with what you're saying. We can get to it afterwards.
Superbad and Booksmart came out 12 years apart. Superbad came out in 2007. Booksmart came out last year, 2019. 13 years apart. Thereabouts. 12, 13. I'm good at math. Both follow high school seniors on what is essentially their last hurrah for high school. In Superbad, it's about buying alcohol to get into a party. In Booksmart, it's about the two girls realizing that they've wasted their high school years by studying so much and going on a last hurrah to find a party. Superbad, the main two are played by Jonah Hill and Michael Cera. In Booksmart, the two main girls are played by Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein. And it's amazing the similarities. They both open up with a semi-dance scene. They both open up with driving to school. They both involve trying to find a party. These two movies would make a great double feature.
Yeah.
Olivia Wilde directed it. And Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein are both really great in it. And they are very Superbad-esque in the humor, in the sort of outlandishness of what they kind of just how they are. But both are great performances. And both are great duos that kind of, I think, in my mind, go hand in hand.
I think Superbad is one of the best adventure films structurally, that it kind of flies under the radar when you think of it in technical terms, because it is just kind of a silly comedy, but it really is solid. It's a solid screenplay.
It's very well plotted. Greg Mottola, the guy who directed it, he also directed Adventureland, which is really, really good too. Not as outrageously funny as Superbad. It's Adventureland is more of a coming of age story with Jesse Eisenberg and Kristen Stewart. And Ryan Reynolds is in there also.
It's really dark.
It gets darker by the end. It does, but it's quite good.
Going back to Swingers and Wedding Crashers, though, they are extremely similar.
Swingers and Wedding Crashers do have a very similar vibe.
Yeah, as far as, two guys just trying to get chicks. Like, that's basically...
But by saying it that way, that is the tone, though.
I honestly think Swingers is probably better than Wedding Crashers, and I know a lot of people might disagree with that.
I think Swingers had a bigger cultural impact than Wedding Crashers, definitely.
I know very few people that have seen Swingers, though.
Oh, but people know it, though.
Yeah, they know the references.
The Vegas Baby Vegas thing, the You're So Money. I mean, maybe this is 20 years ago. It was a lot bigger of a deal. And when we were younger, the Swingers speech pattern, specifically Vince Vaughn's, that is just kind of how a certain type of person talked.
Yeah.
So you're not just like fucking.
No, I'm not fucking with
Honestly,
you. Mike, I'm telling you, your money.
You're so fucking money.
All right, I want you to go over to that girl and I want you to get those digits.
Your money.
Come here a second. Listen to me. Now look it. When you go up to talk to her, man, I don't want you to be the guy in the PG-13 movie everyone's really hoping makes it happen. I want you to be like the guy in the rated R movie, The guy you're not sure whether or not you like yet. You're not sure where he's coming from, okay? You're a bad man. You're a bad man. You're a bad man.
And they play off that character in Wedding Crashers. And I think that's what's so great about Wedding Crashers is they take the Swingers Vince Vaughn character and archetype and they turn it around so that in Wedding Crashers, when he's the one who says, I'm going to get married to Isla Fisher's character, you're kind of blown away by it. It's a gut punch because it feels like he's betraying Owen Wilson and what they built and kind of who he is.
Isla Fisher's relationship with Vince Vaughn is so perfect.
She steals the show in that movie.
because he is known for manipulating women, and she basically manipulated him, and that, if anything, turned him on even more when he
Mhm.
found out. Like, someone who can match me.
Someone who gets me.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever seen the Knife Guy skit on Jimmy Kimmel Live with Will Ferrell and Ryan Gosling?
No.
You need to see it because it's not a movie, but it is next on my list because I would love if they would make a movie together. But I believe they use it to promote the time change for Jimmy Kimmel Live. And basically, Will Ferrell and Ryan Gosling walk out in the middle of the show and roll in this set that looks like this QVC show where Will and Ryan sell knives.
What the hell are you doing here, Jim?
What am I doing? What are you doing? You're supposed to be my guest.
We sell knives at
It's a sign-up
11:30.
sheet.
Everybody knows that.
I
We sell
didn't
knives.
know. I didn't see the sheet.
There's a sign-up sheet.
I didn't read the sheet.
Okay?
I've never seen the sheet. I don't know where the sheet came from.
We've been here for 3 months.
I didn't know. I'm sorry. I don't know how this is my fault.
It doesn't matter, Ryan. Let's get to chopping, huh?
It's just Ryan Gosling's just standing there scowling at Jimmy Kimmel. You need to watch it. It's hilarious.
Ryan Gosling plays a very good stoic scowler. He did it in Drive. I mean, Drive is one of his best performances. He has, 4 lines in that entire movie.
He has great comedic timing, surprisingly. Not surprisingly. I mean, he is a really funny guy. But
him and Russell Crowe played really well off together in The Nice Guys.
Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot Nice Guys.
Which I guess you could consider, it's not an action comedy. It's more of like a mystery, but they're very funny in it.
I love the two of them, and that movie was so great.
If ever there was a movie that was built for you, it's The Nice Guys with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling in a plot that is essentially the closest anything's ever going to come to Chinatown.
Chinatown, yeah. They are two of my favorite actors. I'm so glad that movie was as good as it was. And we can probably talk about it more in depth if we do another one of these episodes. But this is probably where we're going to wrap up this week. It's a slightly shorter episode this week, and likely next week will be as well. We wanted a little bit more time to divert our attention to a new project that Joe and I are working on and looking to get off the ground by the end of the month. But if you like the style of this episode, let us know if you'd like us to expand it into other genres. Until then, we'd love to hear from you and what your favorite duos are in action comedies and comedy films. As we've mentioned before, we are shooting to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to become partners, so if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. If you have any ideas for a theme you'd like us to discuss, or a film, TV show, anything pop culture, let us know on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all those links on channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5. completely spelled out.com.
We have new episodes every Thursday. Until next time, my name is Joe Galino.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.